All right, real happy to have the next guest on the Sports Card Shop guest line. I was recently on his podcast and doing the home and away series, if you will. So this is time to turn the tables. He's the host of the Sports Card Lessons podcast. The man himself, Ken Cairns. Welcome.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Well, and it was a pleasure coming on your show as well. And like I said, when I was on your pod, one of the things I love about you that you do is like the name of your show entails, right? Sports card lessons. You use your platform, you use your voice to teach, to educate, and to learn yourself, right? You're on your show, and I appreciate you say, hey, I learned the hard way here, or I learned a lesson here that I'll know not to do next time. And I think that's one of the tougher things to do in content is, we all like to talk about our W's, right? Oh, we bought this card for $200 and sold it for $800. But, no one likes to talk about when that doesn't exactly happen like that all the time. Yet, you do. I try to do that. I swing and miss sometimes, right? On buying a player or guessing on how he's going to turn out or whatever the case may be, and you're like that too. There's some folks that aren't as much, and so when someone does that, I tend to appreciate it and I find it refreshing. So kudos to you for being that way, I guess, and I'm sure it comes naturally. To speak to that with is it easy to do? Is it, or did you have to sort of make yourself kind of do that? I know you're a teacher like myself. Maybe it comes from a little bit of that.
Yeah, no matter what we do in life, right? We can't win 100% of the time. And nobody does. I don't care who you are. And I've always been that person that um even when people tell me don't do it this way, learn from my mistakes, I generally go do it that way anyways because I want to feel all the mistakes, right? And not only do I want to feel the mistakes, I want to figure out what's the best way to recover from those. So, I do talk about some of the L's on the show, but I talk about how I recovered from them and I may make the same mistake two, three, four, 5 times, and I may try to recover that many times from it. But when I find some way that the recovery is not so bad, I like to put that out there, right? Put that out, so somebody who made the same mistakes that I did, and they said, "Well, hey, sports card lessons. He was talking about he did this. He bought this card for $500, and then it was only $200. But he was able to get that. But then he turned around and he took the L there. But he bought another card that a few months later it was worth more, right? So trying to reverse the effect of the L.
Yeah, and listening to your show, you've shared that and said, hey, I learned from it, and there's a lesson in there that to help someone else maybe avoid that potential pratfall and that sort of thing. I try to do that as well. You do, I've been doing this a long time, 30 something years, almost 40. There's a lot of L's in 40 years. I don't care how good or not good you are, right? And even podcasting, like I said on your show, doing this 5 years, you listen to those early episodes, and they're night and day to today. You started recently in March of 22, if I'm not mistaken. But the podcasting world moves. That doesn't seem like a long time ago, but I mean, it's almost a year. Um, what things happen fast. So talk about kind of from when you started the show to now, stuff you've sort of learned, put in place, and that sort of thing in your content journey.
Mm. When I first started the podcast, um, as a teacher, I wanted to come out and teach all these lessons, right? And I wanted to teach lessons in a hobby that I hadn't spent enough time in recently. And as I started the podcast, I realized that I'm learning more. Even though I'm the teacher, I'm out in the hobby and I'm learning so much
Mhm.
more. And then I felt, as I went on through season 1, I said, let me start taking all these things I've learned, right? And then put them into try to create teachable moments, right? Um, it was a little difficult. I mean, and no matter what we do, we have the best intentions to do anything. Things wherever they started, they never end up there, right? So, my early episodes, my first 20, 30 episodes in season 1, they were an hour long. I was tired. Like I was worn out after sitting there talking for a whole hour, right? To a screen and a camera. And I would go back and listen and I'd say, I don't think I needed to go into all this detail, like really breaking things down so much. And there were certain parts of I tried to bring in different segments, talk about maybe some comp prices on some football cards, or, talk about other things. And I realized, well, people could do that on their own. They really don't need to hear that from me. So I really, over the course of the first season, I really kind of started to find my identity, who I was going to
Mhm.
be. And by the end of season 1, I had it down to 30 minutes, right? I tried to keep it in around 30 minutes, get straight to the point. And most of my content at that point was just coming from the shows. I would go to a show or set up at a show, and just things that I observed. And, sometimes things may seem so obvious, and getting the people that all the feedback I was getting, the comments I was getting, like I would just say something, just so I would say it small and just say, well, I'll give you a for instance. um I can't go out and buy a card on eBay and put it on my table at the show, because the next guy that's going to come up, he's going to see that exact sale on eBay as he looks up the comps, and now he's going to want it for 10% or 20% under that price, right? So instantly I'm going to lose money. And to me, that was just like a no-brainer. But you don't know how many people commented and said that, as simple as that sounded, like it really, people really, it made sense to people, right? And then I thought to
Yeah.
myself, maybe this is the area, maybe this is what I should be focusing on. Not thinking like maybe this is so simple, but there's all these things that I can just talk about, and I'm sure it's going to, resonate with somebody out there, and it's going to be good information for them.
Yeah, and you got to remember, you have a wide variety of listeners, right? You have people who are very experienced. You have some maybe intermediate level folks, and then maybe people coming back or just getting back that need maybe a little more, educational type of information, and that's and so it's tough to win the whole room, but I think if you can win a good percentage of the room, if you're yourself and genuine, I think it starts there too. So yeah, I mean, even if you're talking about something where someone listening is saying in their own head, like, "Hey, I know this already."
Mm,
But if you're coming from a good place and you're genuine, I think they'll still appreciate it, even though they might not get any nutritional value from it. The fact that you are helping those that don't know that, right? I think most will appreciate that and stay with it, right? It's
mm,
it's sometimes when you're not, yourself or genuine, or that's sort of what people perceive, that's where
yeah,
that might not be the case. So again, there's all different levels to the hobby, high end, low end, and all that stuff. I'm learning, 30 plus years, I learned something every day. This is evolving. This hobby, I had a store in the 90s, and having a store now is no comparison. Someone asked me any tips. I can give tips. My buddy just opened a store, and he asked me knowing I had a store. I said, listen, I can give you basic stuff, but when I had the store, it's a different hobby than we're in today. So what worked for me then probably wouldn't translate, whatever it is now, 30, almost 30 years later. So to say that, I can share as much as I can, and I'll help you. But I may not come from actually store experience. It may just come from being in the hobby this long and kind of knowing where we're at. So I learn every day. I know from listening to you, you're of the similar ilk and mindset to learn every day and also teach every day. As we have that teaching gene, if you will. You've been doing it a lot longer. You're retired, but you did it a lot longer than I have. I'm only 2 years into it, but we talked about. I know you were in the hobby. You kind of came back, and you really like hit the ground running. I mean, you started doing shows pretty quickly. You talk about it on your own content, like having to sort of change over some of your inventory to be more ready for a show and to thrive and do well. Talk about sort of that process and how easy or difficult it was to acquire the inventory, to diversify in a sense to do well.
Yeah. So, when I first started out, I shouldn't say when I jumped back in and I was going to do it. I really had no idea what I was doing, and I can say that 100%. But the teacher slash student part of me went out and researched the heck out of it, like what I should be doing. And I do have to say, um, and I just had Rob, sports card therapist, on my show, and he said to me, um, "I couldn't have done this without you," meaning me. He said,
Yeah,
I'm not giving you credit for all the things that I've accomplished, but I'm just saying I wouldn't be here without you, um, being my friend in the hobby, right? Having that someone in the hobby. And it didn't really set in when I was talking to him, but afterwards I thought about it, right? And I think that was the most important thing, that I just had somebody to bounce ideas off of all the time. So as I would learn something, he was already in the hobby, so he knew a little more. So I would ask him, and I would get great answers and feedback from him, and I would ask other people. So I relied on all the people around me. And I started in my cases. I started mostly with football. At the very beginning, I started with football. And then I walked around the shows, and that business mind of mine, um, I look in everybody's cases and I'd say, okay, what don't I see? I don't see tennis in anybody's case, and I don't see, wrestling in anybody's case, and I don't see, women's soccer or anything, whatever I wasn't seeing. And I say, well, let me be that guy. Let me be that guy. Let me put those things in my case. So kind of have a little bit of a buffet. So when people come around that they would, and I learned a lot of lessons. I learned a lot of lessons why there wasn't a lot of tennis in the room, and why there wasn't a lot of, because people just weren't buying it, right? And I came from a hockey background, and I knew so much about hockey, and really wanted to be that kind of the hockey guy, but nobody really had hockey at that time in their cases either. Everything was basketball, football, baseball. Those were the only, those were the big sports, and soccer was gaining traction. So I was kind of copying mostly just kind of what I saw, and picking people's brains, and trying to figure out, what to put in my case. And at the end of the day, I realized, and at the end of my season one, and I started season two, I said, if I am going to be in this hobby, uh, I am going to purchase things, and you hear people say this all the time. If I purchased this card and it went to zero, would I love having it? So at the end of the day, I said, you know what? What I'm purchasing, what I'm going to get, what I'm going to put in my case is what I love. It's just the cards that I like, whether it's, boxing, whether it's football, whether it's women's soccer, whatever it's going to be cards I absolutely love. And some of the other stuff I love was the Pop Century. I love that from the beginning, the pop culture stuff, the
Mhm.
Pop Century cards, the music cards, which I'm starting to accumulate now and populate my cases with now. And it's just stuff that I love. And when I go to the shows, I always look forward to going to a show. I look even more forward to setting up at a show. But now when I'm putting some of these music cards and these and like my Mike Tyson cards and stuff like that in the cave, and people are stopping and we're having these great conversations, whether the cards are selling or not, the conversation to me was so much better. And a lot of times, just out of that conversation and just out of these interactions, I find so much content that I can come back and just use on the podcast.
Yeah, it's funny hearing you say that. You're dead on. I agree with you. We're waving the same pennant, right? I get a lot of times, dealers. You know how you're being a dealer now yourself. End of the show. Hey, how'd you do? And obviously, you hope you do well financially, right? That's why we set up. I don't think we have to apologize for that. And it's great when you say, "Yeah, I had a great show, man. Did well." Some of my best shows, though, aren't always dollar signs alone, right? It's
Mhm.
it's it's exactly what you just said, Ken. It's conversations, it's friendships that you make. It's a sale you might not have made that day, but the conversation lays the groundwork for a transaction another month or another week down the road, or even a trade.
Yep.
Again, we sometimes we put too much of an influence on the dollar sign itself when it can
Mhm.
just be
Mhm.
a card for card or cards for
Yeah.
card, whatever the
Yeah.
trade works out to be, right?
Yeah.
And so, I've had those conversations with, hey, it was okay, but some of the other stuff, the people I met, the conversations I had really made this day great, right? And
Mm.
you can't sometimes you can't put a price value on,
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
on that, right? It's easy
Yeah.
to count the money. Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things I was going to say is, what I find now is I'm putting these cards in my case that I love, and it's attracting like-minded people, right? So
Yeah.
people, you're at a show, you're at a show, and a guy's walking by with a case, and he looks in, and he may see your Jackie Robinson card, right? And he may say, "Oh, look at what I have. It's not for sale. I'm not selling it, but look what I have." Right. And now you realize you have something in common. And that's what I find. Like people are stopping and showing me cards. They may be for sale, but they're just showing me cards that are similar to what I have, because they walking up to my table can look at my case and say, "Hey, we have similar interests," right? And now that conversation starts and those friendships are born.
Yeah, and again, where they lead, who you don't know it in the moment, right? And then
Yeah.
and then years later, I have friendships in the hobby that started, 10 years ago from I didn't know the person at all. They came up to the table, asked a few questions, and all these years later is now, they're calling me at home or on my cell phone and hey, do you got this? I'd rather get it from you. Hold it, there's sometimes I'll have a sale before I even get to the show. They know I'm going to be there. They know I have this card. They're like, I'll get it from you Saturday. See you Saturday. See you Sunday.
Mm.
Whatever the case may be. Or even, again, going beyond the dollar sign, right? Even sometimes, hey John, they know I don't have this particular card, but they want to pick my brain. What do you think I should do? Where's the best place to look for or buy it from? Is now a good time? Should I wait? You think it's better off I wait or try to pull the trigger now, right? And again, a lot of that speculation. They're just asking me for an experienced opinion, if you will. I always say there are no experts in this hobby. There's just different levels of experience because, like you said, we're wrong a lot of the times, not on purpose, but we give our best assessment, our
Mm.
best opinion, and sometimes it's not always accurate. I was on this show just as the pandemic was going to hit and saying it's going to be a rough time for the hobby. I was looking fastball and got a curveball and corkscrewed myself. But a lot of people said the same thing, right? No, I
Mm.
don't think anyone really saw that coming. So, and that's with 30 something years of so sometimes experience can be even overrated too. It's just you see a lot, we talked about on your show a young man who's who's pretty new to the hobby doing very, very well for himself. So experience it can get you places, but sometimes it's got to be more to it than that. That alone sometimes wouldn't be enough. Sometimes just there's probably a little luck involved too. Truth be told, right?
Yeah.
And right place, right time, as that cliche goes. But you make a great point with the people you meet along the way that can help you, even if it's just, and that's a skill too, right? Is the ability to ask for help or
Yeah.
what do you think, right? Some people are
Yeah.
have a tough time doing that. Let's put it that way. Or our little trepidation there to ask somebody else. I've never, I have no problem asking someone, but sometimes that's not easy to do, right? It's people might feel it makes them vulnerable or appear weak, which I don't agree with. I'm just saying that might be why someone doesn't. So to do that, right? I think it's the opposite to me. It's showing that hey, I don't know everything. I never claim to,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of people here that we can lift each other up and help each other out. And this time, I'm going to ask you. Maybe there'll be a time in the future you in turn ask me,
Yeah.
and it's reciprocal. So, you know, uh, go ahead. I know you.
No, I was just going to say that's the one thing I found in this hobby was that, um, there's you can go out and you can help people, but just not expect anything in return. And people will come to you and say, "Oh, let me give you some information. Let me give you some advice. Let me help you with that." And they're not looking for anything in return,
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you meet people, and this is where you start gaining respect of people in the hobby, and this is where you can earn the respect of people in the hobby too. And I'll give you a
yeah.
for instance. I was at a show this weekend of a guy I've spoke to it a couple times as a show I'd been doing, and only spoke to a few times, but now we're friends. Before the show we walk around and we say hello, have a little conversation. Now we see each other all the time. He had a card in his case that I absolutely loved, and he had a $200 price tag on it. And I said, "Will you do 140 for the card?" And he said, "Let me see what I paid for that card." And he pulled up on his phone. He said, "No." He said, "I bought the card for $60." He said, "If you want it, $60." Now I know the value, the comps on this card are around 150. Right?
Yeah.
And we we determined beforehand that this wasn't a card I was going to resell. It was a card I absolutely loved and
Mhm.
I was going to keep. It was going to go on my PC. And he just said, "Here, no." Like I was offering him more than double what he actually took for the card. Right? So here is something that somebody offered to me, right? And then when somebody else comes up to me that I feel like in the hot and I'm gonna pass it forward, right? Do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think this is where there's not a lot of people, and John, you've set up at tons of shows, and you may have 250 tables in there. And out of those 250 tables, I would say probably 200, 225 need to get every penny for the card. I'm not knocking them, right? Because I don't know what their what they need, what is going
Yeah.
on in their life, and how important it is to but there's guys like you and me and other guys that don't need that, right? And we
Hmm.
start helping each other out. "Oh, I know this is your here, come here. No, I'll take care of you." Sometimes, how many times have you just taken a card and just handed it to somebody and said, "No, just
Yep.
take it, just take it," right?
Yep.
And I've done the same thing too. But this is this is the part of the hobby, right, that means so much to me, right? It's finding that, because you don't find that very many other places in your life where you go. You don't you will find this with friends and certain people, but you don't find that a lot. And this was one of the biggest things about this hobby that attracted me about this hobby, that we can be real people and we can help each other out. And if somebody's down, we can help them out. And if I'm down, I could ask for help and you could come help me. Or if I just needed some information and stuff like that. And you start surrounding yourselves with like-minded people and just really good people. Right. And that, like I
Yeah.
said, that's the thing that really attracted me to the hobby.
Yeah, it's that community, the tagline of the show, hobbies, the people, and that stuff too is contagious. And it reminded me, you telling the story of the dealer just giving you that basically at cost what he paid for it, no questions asked, when you had already offered $80 more. It reminded me of a story. I had a person come up to my table. This isn't that, a couple years ago, and there was a card. I'm not even sure. I don't remember who it was, but it was a card. They asked they could see it. I took it out of the case. I think it was a $40 card. Very nice, polite. They asked to see it, and they're like, "This is my last card. I need to fill this set. This is the missing card." And I'm like, "Well, now you got a complete set." And he looked at me like, "Well, I didn't buy it yet," And I'm like, "No, He goes, he didn't even say nothing. He looked at me. I'm like, it's yours. Your set's done." And he was shocked. He goes, "I wasn't asking I know you did. I'm doing that."
Mm.
And he goes, "Oh man, I want to give you a hug. How about a high five?" I gave him a high five. Well, couldn't take me enough. He said, "I'll be back. I'll be back." It was kind of crowded. There was another gentleman at the table at the time looking through a box, and he pulled out a $20 card, and he handed me two 20s. And I thought, well, maybe he read it wrong, or is there another card that I'm not seeing? And so I handed him the $20 back, and he goes, "No." I'm like, "This is only 20. You gave me two 20s." He goes, I know. I saw what you just did with that gentleman, and that's something else. And I can afford to do that. And I'm like, "Well, I'm not, I did that not to have this happen." He goes,
Mm.
"No, I understand that. I want you to have that. That's you did a good deed. That's my good deed. I'm not taking it back. So please put it in your pocket." So that stuff is, and again, I didn't give that card to get an extra $20 on the next sale. If that didn't happen, I would have been great with it.
Yeah.
But that stuff's the point of that is it's just that's contagious, right? And that person, I want that. I can't make anyone say, but I want to have that person say, "Hey, that John guy over there, that guy set up over there. I can't believe he did this, right?"
Mm.
Um, rather than maybe something else, like, "Man, that guy's ridiculous. He's $100 over comps or whatever." And like you said, I think you make a great point. And I appreciate you even said, like, everyone might be in a different circumstance, right? So we can't fault somebody for maybe their modus operandi. But if we're in a space in our lives, right, where we can do that, and it's not going to hurt us, it's actually make us feel good and about what we're doing. It's great that we're in that place to be able to do it. And in some of those cases, that stuff again is contagious. It leads to, it's like a domino effect. That domino hits the next domino, and there's not enough of that, right? The more we can do that, the better. And so I appreciate when you're like that, when the dealer you mentioned with the card you wanted is like that. Some of the things I try to do, I'm a kids in a hobby guy, so when kids come up to the table, I always have some packs that are not out. I tend to, hey buddy, here's and the mom or dad will say, "How much is that?" I'm like, "No, I don't even have those out. I gave that to them. That's
Yeah.
my gift." "No, really?" Like they're shocked by it almost. And that stuff just, that might be the difference when I do that for a kid. I might, I think back to 7-year-old me, right? That might be the difference whether that kid stays in the hobby. I know I'm being dramatic there on some
No,
levels, but
not at all.
you you
Yeah.
you never know. That might be something he remembers and says, "Hey man, this hobby's really cool. This guy gave me a free pack." And who, some of these packs are not they're not all cheapy pack. Who knows what they pull in it? I had some kids will say thank you and go away. And I never know what was actually in the pack, and that's fine. I have other kids open it there and pull something where, oh, that's $40. Let me give you a top loader, a sleeve and a top loader, so you don't bang it around, right? And you give them that, and makes their day, right? And it to the parents, it shows like, hey, this hobby yeah, it can be expensive, it can be daunting, but there's still good people who it's not all about just dollar signs. And
Yeah.
you know, it's you never know. It's the same thing I say with content creation. You never know who's listening, and you never know, like with that stuff at a show, you never know, what kind of impact. And it may not be that day. It may be somewhere years down the line, right?
Yeah.
And and I try to be like that. I've done enough shows now. You kind of the light bulb comes on, and you either get it or you kind of don't. And I like to think I do.
Mm.
So yeah, go ahead. I go
No,
ahead,
I was
Ken.
just gonna say, I mean, I know exactly the way you feel, and I have,
Yeah,
at my table, I do the same thing. I have some cards, some packs, and I
yeah,
have dollar cards in the boxes too. And
yeah,
you get a lot of times you'll get parents that'll show up with the kids that the kids really want to be there, and they may be 6, 7, 8 years old, right? And the parents have no idea what's going on, and they'll come up and they'll say, "Oh, he's looking for," and if I have it in the dollar box, he's taking it.
yeah,
I'm not taking the
yeah,
dollar for it, that type of thing. And
yeah,
I thank the parents. Right here, I'm giving him the card, but thank you for bringing him out, introducing him to the
yeah,
hobby or her to the hobby or whoever. Sometimes it's, and I find now a lot of grandparents are
yeah,
bringing the kids
yeah,
to the shows, right? The grandparents are there, helping out, watching the kids, taking the kids out, and they chose to bring them to this show today. And I don't think many people in the room are thanking them, but I do. I'm sure to thank the mothers, the fathers, the grandparents, especially when they're coming with the little kids. And when you know when they show up and they have no idea what's going on, and as soon as you're friendly to them, right, they have questions. And that's
yeah,
great because, and I say no. They're like, "Oh, I'm sorry for bothering you." I'm like, "No, just keep asking me
yeah,
questions because I'd love to answer them for you to make you feel as comfortable as you can in this room, because this room can be overwhelming for people who
yeah,
know nothing." It was overwhelming for me when the very first show I went to Hofstra University, right? And it was
yeah,
right as the pandemic was just, it was the first show after the pandemic, right? And it was so overwhelming. It was so crowded for me. So I know the feelings I was having that day. So when I set up at shows and I see people, I try to make them feel as comfortable as I can, because you want them to come back, right? You want them to keep
yeah.
coming back. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. And you opened the door, right? That they didn't know there was any doors going to be open until you opened it and sort of let them in, and then like you said, then the questions start coming, and you help out, and again, you never know honestly where that leads. And I always say with kids, especially kids, right? That's some people I've had people debate this with me, Ken, but I'm going to die on that hill. I think kids are the future of the hobby, right?
Yeah.
I think we need them, right, to stay in the hobby, even if they left for a period of time, like the story goes, right? But come back. They got to like the hobby enough to come back. We need them for future generations of the hobby to thrive and
Yeah.
be successful.
Absolutely.
And if we can do if little things like that we do can be maybe the difference between whether someone enjoys the hobby or not, or stays in it or not, then I'm willing to, do my part, just as like you said you are. And and if they don't, well, at least we tried, right?
Yeah.
E for effort on our part. Well, we've seen, one of the things I have less of a harder time now than my younger show and store days, but like separating a card that's going to be in your PC versus going to make your showcase and be part of your show inventory. How does that work for you? Like I said, for me, it was harder years ago than it is now because my PC is more defined now than it ever was prior. But for you, how does that work? Is it tough or not really?
Well, it's not tough, and like I debated this as setting up, and I asked a lot of people their opinions, right? So people would say, "Oh, once it's your PC card, never bring it to a show, leave it home." Other people say, "Bring it to a show because you never know when a good trade may come, where you could trade up to that card or a better version of that card or something like that." But at the end of the day, what I've figured out is what my PC cards are. If I bring some of them, the higher end ones, and put them in a case, I can talk with other people and I learn about new cards that are out there, and they'll stop
Mhm.
and say, for instance, Mike Tyson, right? He's one of my PC guys, and I have some high end cards, and people stop. They love these cards, and they stop and they ask. But people stop too. They show up and they're pulling out, some Mike Tyson's cards. They're not for sale, but at least I get to experience this with them and look at their cards, and we could talk about the cards and things like that. And I'm always learning, and you're going to hear me. You know, th- Always saying that I'm always learning, and I'm always finding new cards. And I get excited when I see new cards. I've really switched in my case. I have a lot of hockey in my case, but I started, PCing Alex Ovechkin, over the last, 6, 8 months. And really, I mean, I have, just some, high pop cards of his, but part of my PC is getting these low pop cards. Um,
Mhm.
Again, they're very expensive. Uh, I'll price them higher in my case because I don't plan to move them. Two things will happen. One, they'll show me the card, show me what Ovechkins they have. Two, um, people thank me for putting them out because I have a number of pop one cards, pop two, pop three, and maybe like just to eight, right? A set of cards that are just numbered to eight or numbered to 10 or 15. So there's only 15 of those cards, and who knows if they all survived, right? So here's a card that you're not going to see online because when you do a search, nobody's selling the card. I have the card, here it is in the case, and they can come up and see it. It- do I want to say it's like going to a museum or to where you can see something that's a little rare? But they thank me that they're able to just see the card in person. And I know when it comes to vintage, I know a lot of people that deal vintage, and when they love to put those vintage cards, and people come from all around just to see. They want to see the card. They know the card exists. They know what it looks like, but they want to see it in person. So I make room. I make room in my case,
Yeah.
my PC cards, and some that are my PC cards that are, pop culture and things like that. Maybe they're not so rare, but they mean a lot to me. I just keep them here in the office. That I don't need to bring them out to the shows back and forth. I just keep them here in the office, and they're for me. They're for me to enjoy. You're never going to be sold. I'm not going to sell the cards, and hopefully when I'm gone, somebody here will enjoy the cards as much as I did.
Yeah, I got to give you credit. You're a better guy than me there. It's funny because last year I acquired the 48 leaf Jackie. That was my Grail card, and a lot of people who follow the show, or especially here on the local level, or knew what that card meant to me. Like that doesn't come to the show. It's behind me, over my shoulder here. But like the first card show I did after announcing that I had finally gotten it, everyone's like, "Where is it?" And I'm like, I didn't bring it to the show, but like, why not?" And I'm like, I don't trust myself like to lose it. God forbid something else, someone, somehow, I'm pretty alert, but things happen, right? You hear stuff get stolen at the National where there's three guys working that table, and yet someone managed to go walk off with a card, right? I'm usually, maybe I have a friend drop by or something, but for the most part, it's me. Sometimes my son's there, not all the time. Like my big fear would be that that just disappears, right?
Mm.
And not just financial, but just what the card means to me.
Yeah.
Besides, what it cost. The cost was almost secondary to what it means, on a personal level. And I'll say if I know the person real well, like you can come over, I'll do you see it, but I don't. I'm probably not gonna bring it because I don't want to
You
sell
sure
it.
you want to give
Right?
your
It took me
address
that
out?
long.
You sure you want to
Well,
give the address
some
out?
people. Well, I'm not doing it on the air, that's for sure. But so it's tough. I get, and there. I'll say this, as like you, sometimes there'll be a few cards in my case. They're borderline PC cards. They're like you said. I'll price them a little high, admittedly so. where, hey, listen, if that's what someone wants to pay, I'll let it go. But there is an attachment there, and I've had this. I don't do that a lot because I don't know how it is with someone will say like that seems a little high, and I'll say it is. I'm not gonna lie about it, but I don't really want to sell it. And that goes either one or I've had this situation, and it usually goes one or two ways, right? I understand that, or they might get even a little more angry about it. Well, you're over comps, like and sometimes. I'm not a big. I don't like to argue, and I usually don't. I'll just be like, "You're right," but I just explained to you why that is, right? And every 98% of everything else is under comps or right about at them. So it's just this one card, right?
Mm,
But you get into those situations, right? So I'm a little leery of that. I think too, it's more like if it is a PC card, something could could go missing or whatnot. I'm probably a little more worried about it than on that level than I should be. But that's how the New York City kid in me just looking at all the angles, right?
yep.
Just product of my environment. So I tend not to, but there are a couple cards, like you said, that I might have more of attachment to. That I'll sort of price accordingly. I think most people get it when you explain that to them. You get that rare exception, right? Someone's just kind of grumpy and says, "That's terrible, man." That and like I told you why. It's one or two cards in all these cards here that would qualify for that. But you
Mhm.
can't win again. You can't win the whole room, right? If more people understand, I guess that's the best you can ask for. We've seen prices kind of come down. A lot of people don't like that. I have dealer friends that are like, "Man, this is ridiculous. I can't believe I had to sell that for that, John." And I'm like, "Listen, you should be buying. You should be. This is a two-sided coin. Like I get, what you just said." Or don't put it out, right? You got a choice. It's your showcases, it's your inventory. You don't want to sell it, you don't have to put it out, but it's also a great opportunity to buy some stuff. I've recently bought cards that prior to this, what people deem a reset, um, that were out of reach, with price wise, and now they
Mhm.
are. So I'm using it, to my advantage. Some things will go back up, some things won't. That's the fun, right? To kind of
Yeah,
predict or guess
right.
what will or what won't.
And it
What's
made
been
it.
your approach?
I was gonna
Yeah,
say it
go ahead.
made it affordable, right? It
Yeah,
made some of these cards that were unaffordable for most people are becoming affordable now. And that's why it it really and I'm kind of happy because when I jumped in, I was very, I didn't want to put too much money out there, right? So I was buying smaller things and selling smaller things, and I was watching the people around me making enormous purchases and then making enormous profits on that. And I was a little scared, right? I didn't know enough about the hobby to take, you know, a big chunk of money and go out and put it into cards and then hope that I was going to flip that card a week or two or a month later. And most people, when I tell my story, they're like, "Oh, you waited too long and you missed out." But I was fine. I was fine not going through that because it probably would have gotten me into more trouble when the market did correct, right? And that's
yeah,
what I think happened to a lot of people. Like they did very well, but then the market corrected and it was who got stuck with what, right? When the
it's
prices
hot
came
potato.
down. Yeah. So I knew enough about the hobby. I knew enough about setting up at shows and walking shows, and I've learned enough and I got enough great information from all the people I surrounded myself with to start creating a PC of my own. And I knew what to look for. I knew, numbered and game worn and low pop and all these things that I didn't know about. And if I would have jumped into trying to start a PC, I would have been one of those guys saying, I put a lot of money out and the cars just aren't, worth what I paid for them. So it worked for me that after the market correction that I went out and started buying all these cards. So I never had to reach in my own pocket. I created a system where I made an investment in myself, and I took I didn't put any more money into the hobby. So what I had,
Yeah.
and I was going to the shows and everything I was doing, I was buying, selling, buying, putting in my case, selling it, and then creating, money that I could spend in my PC. And there were times I took cards out of my case that somebody came around and said, "Hey, I've got this great this card right here above my shoulder, the Alex Ovechkin PMG to 100. I have this great card. At one point, it was what, $7,000, $8,000. It's half of that now. And I really like your Mahomes card right here. Let's work something out. And now all of a sudden, the hobby is really working for me, right? So I'm able to take a card out of my case that I don't have, a lot of money invested in and a little bit of cash, and I end up with a great PC card. And now I'm figuring out like a whole new thing about the easiest and the best ways to level up, like what cards like people are looking for, and by talking to dealers and knowing what shows they're going to. And I know who has some of the chase cards that I want, and I know when I'm going to see them at a show, and I know what they like to take in as trade. So I try to work that. I try to find these, instead of going out and finding, because I just think it's more fun, instead of just going out and finding the card that I want and just making the purchase. If I know somebody who owns this card and it's a low pop, and I know they'll take trade in basketball, or I'll go find these cards somewhere else. And then when I see them at the show, I'll be like, "Hey, I got these great cards. Are you interested?" And now we start to
Yeah.
negotiate, we make a deal. And if you listen to my season one, I really talk about every card coming with a story. And if I just go and buy a card somewhere and then I just put it in my PC, it has no story. So I don't think it has a deeper meaning to me than when I go out
Mhm.
and I make a deal, or I talk with somebody and I get this card, and then I can tell the story of this card. When I see this card, I remember the person I got it from. I remember the negotiation. I remember the story, and it just means that much more to me than just saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, they want 5,000 for the card. Here's 5,000. Give me the card. I'm going to put it in my PC." I don't know. It just doesn't have that much meaning to me.
Yeah, no, I agree, right? It's a lot of those stories behind the cards and the acquisition, right? I can look at a lot of my PC cards and, like you said, remember what show it was acquired at, who I bought it from, even if there was a negotiation, sort of how that went, and numbers, and the conversation where they acquire, how they got it, and even talking about the athlete or the player themselves, or why you want the card for your PC, right? It's so, like you said, you hit it right on the head. The stories, getting the card in itself is great, but if there's that thread or something, a storyline behind it, I think it does have even more meaning, like you said, and I
Mm.
agree with that. And I have both. I think we all can say what we have both sides of that coin, right? There are cards that there's no real great story to tell, right? But if you have more that have a story than don't, then I think you're doing all right. And you can't put a price on that. Like, that's in addition to the transaction, right? You don't pay extra for that, or hopefully you don't, right? And that's one of the great things with the hobby. You can remember what city you were in, what show, how it all went down. It might even be even a story, but before you even got to the table, someone who knows, hey, Ken's looking for that card. I seen it over there at table 523. I'm gonna find them, tell them, hey Ken, the gentleman over there, booth 523, has the card. Go talk to them, right? So now you have even a story outside of the transaction itself. Hey,
Yeah.
this person kind of got the ball rolling. So
Yeah.
there's so many different layers to the hobby, what we do as a dealer and a consumer, right? Both sides of the table, and that's the fun, right? When we're packing up our vehicles to set up at a show, or we're just jumping in our vehicles to attend the show as a consumer, right? Yeah, as you're going there, right? You're thinking, at least I am, my mind's thinking of, what's going to happen today? Who am I going to see? Who am I going to talk to? What might I acquire? Who might day I potentially can make with getting them a card they've been looking for or want. So, it's all that stuff, right? It's like the anticipation. If I'm a former athlete, right? It's all that stuff before the game, right? The butterflies and the jitters. Well, it's
Yeah.
the hobby equivalent, I guess. As we get older and we're not playing those same sports, it's the equivalent of that of the hobby that we enjoy. And
Yeah.
I don't think I know you do. I try to. I think sometimes we don't talk about that often enough. It's really just the dollars and cents, and I get that's important too. We got analytics and charts and all that good stuff, but
Mhm.
I like the stories behind the transactions too, and the people behind the cards on both sides of the table, right? And we
Yeah.
wear both of those hats as
Yeah.
buyers and sellers. So,
Mhm.
well, listen, I appreciate you coming on. I'd love to have you back. I'm not into just having people on one time. So let's make there's stuff we didn't probably get to because we're both passionate guys and enjoy talking about it. So we'll have to do it again on a future episode. But give out all your information, where people can catch you. If you want to plug even a show you're going to be at, I know we talked a lot about shows, but no rush to whatever you want to put out there for those listening to find you, see you, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, sports card underscore lessons. YouTube channel is sports card lessons. I have a podcast that drops on Mondays and Thursdays. Generally, Monday is a solo and Thursdays an interview. That's the way season 2 has been going for me right now. And I also do some episodes for the wolf pack content with underscores between the two. There are 7 of us, and we've been doing episodes every Wednesday. We're dropping an episode there. So Monday, Wednesday, Thursday of the week, you can catch me talking, and on the weekends you can catch me at the shows I set up in all the Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Jersey shows, the local shows here, and I'll be out at national this year too. Maybe we could do a national getting ready for national episode, maybe in June or something, John. Right before we head out there.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. I know I'm a kid in a candy store. I know in listening to you're the same way. So I think it'll be a fun episode. It'll get everyone. Not that anyone needs to be. That's sort of self motivating, but
Yeah,
we'll just add a little fuel to everyone's fire.
yeah,
Let's plan on doing something definitely in June. I don't even care if we make it in addition. I'll go an extra day. We'll get it done. But and
sounds
I got to
good.
give you credit, man. When I mean, you do the circuit with shows. You remind me of the younger version myself when I was doing a lot of traveling. I'm gonna be honest with you. When I see at some of all these shows, I'm not gonna lie. I'm jealous because I'd love to still do it, but I just can't get away with it. But God bless you, and
Yeah,
it's awesome. I'm jealous in a good way
yeah,
that you get to do that, and it's one of the funner things in the hobby, right? Going to a show,
yeah,
either side of the table, quite frankly. So whatever hat you get to wear, and you're going a lot of places. I know you mentioned even maybe coming to Syracuse. I love to see you And if you do, you're welcome to hang. I'm sure you don't want to do it all day, but you got a seat next to me behind the table anytime you need it to talk, just hang out, or what have you. So you're definitely welcome. So I appreciate you making some time today.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate the offer, and you will probably see me at a Syracuse show. I'm sure you will. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm
Thanks
looking
for
forward
having me
to it.
on. This has been great. It's been good talking to you. And I know
Yeah.
when you were on mine and we finished talking, I mean, we talked for another hour after we turned the thing off, and we could probably do this weekly, right?
Yeah, we could do a marathon if there was, we could do 24/7 hobby content. We'll run a couple commercials and take quick naps
Yeah.
and then come right back. So, well, Ken, keep up the great work, man. You got awesome stuff. You're passionate. You love what you do. That comes shining through. You don't have to look for it. It's easy to see. And appreciate you coming on, and we'll do it again for sure.
Thanks, John.